That's what I'm talking about. Hello, welcome back to Suburban Hunt 365. I'm DJ. Last week's video took you guys out to my buddy's property where we did the gel block test. This week I brought you out to the range. The range that I'm at today is one I'm a member of, which is Middle Tennessee Sporting Association's a fantastic range. We got all the way up to 400 yards out there. Today we're only going to be using 100 yards of it because I finally found it, guys. What I'm talking about is what you saw in the thumbnail, and that is this guy. I'll just show you close up real quick, but that is the Shooter's World multi-purpose black powder. I know that Luke and Todd in Wyoming had both asked me about this previously. Honestly, looking at Todd's comment was about 6 months ago, and Luke's was almost a year ago, or a little over a year ago. So guys, your patience, you honestly probably just forgot about it and was like, well, he's never gonna get around to it. But I actually found this stuff at a gun shop in Little Rock, Arkansas. And as soon as I saw it, I remembered the comments and I was like, I've gotta pick it up. And that's exactly what I did. I picked it up, and as soon as I had a chance, I came out here to the range. And let me tell you guys, this stuff really did not disappoint. So let's take a look at what we've got here. So you see that we got the Shooter's World on the right hand side there, and then we got Blackhorn 209, 777 2F, 777 3F, Pyrex, which is a 2F, and then RS, which is also a 2F. But what I want you to see is here you can see the Blackhorn 209 has those tubular granules. Then the 777 2F is more of a coarse. And then you have the 3F here, which is a much finer. And then you come over here, we have a 2F in the Pyrex Select. And you can see the coarseness there. The RS is pretty similar, even though the Select is supposed to be a little bit better, going back to Select. But then when you come over here and you look at the Shooter's World, that is the most coarse powder that I've seen so far. So you have the tubular style in the Blackhorn 209, the 777 coarse, 777 finer, then you have the Select, and then the RS, which are, as far as coarseness goes, they're pretty similar. And then, like I said, with the Shooters, you really have an extremely coarse granule on that one. All right, and looking at it price-wise, you look at the 777s, they're pretty much on par with the 777s. I went on to Mid-South Shooter Supply and found the 777 2F at $35.99, 3F $35.99, and then you look up the Pyrex. The Pyrex is cheaper at $24.99, and for the RS, and then $31.99 for the Select in the Pyrex. And this stuff is coming in at $35.99. So it's a little bit more expensive than the other guys, but it's nowhere near the $90 for the Blackhorn 209. Now again, the Blackhorn 209 is 8 ounces, whereas all of these are 1 pound jugs. So the Blackhorn 209 is still way more expensive than this, but it is a little bit higher when you're comparing to 777 and the Pyrex. All right, guys, getting into the cleanliness of this powder, we're obviously not going to be as good as the Blackhorn 209, but we are going to be quite a bit better than the 777 and the Pyrex in the RS and Select. Now, the 777 was a bear because it took a while to, basically, you had to kind of scrub all that stuff out of the barrel. The RS, kind of the similar thing, so they're right there neck to neck with each other. But with the Shooter's World, basically it was a little bit better than that, but not as good as the Blackhorn 209. But then again, the price kind of reflects that. So you have the 777 at the bottom of the list. That's more difficult to clean up. The RS, a little bit harder, or a little bit easier. This Shooter's World is actually pretty simple. I was actually surprised with, given the amount of residue that was in the barrel, how easy it was to clean that out of the barrel. So it's definitely better than the other cheaper powders, but it's not quite as easy as the Blackhorn 209. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into what we're actually here for at the range. Let's get into the accuracy of this projectile. What I am going to be using is the Hornady ELD-X, the 345 grain projectile that we have been using. We're going to continue to use the Federal 209 primers to be able to push that down range. So following the chart that we have on our Excel spreadsheet, we're looking at 63 grains, 77.7 grains, 80 grains, and then 93 grains. And the reason that the 77.7 is so close to the 80 is because with the other powders, I do mine by weight. Everything that I've done loose powder wise is by weight. So with the 777s, we know that 77.7 is exactly, or should be exactly equivalent to 100 grains by volume. So I'll put that in there for relevance. The 80 grains is because a lot of the guys that I've talked to that have done this a while say that the 80 grains is where a lot of their projectiles land as far as the good accuracy goes. So I want to test that as well. The 63 grain is kind of the low end, and the 93 is on the high end of what the recommended ranges are. Now, I know there's plenty of you guys out there that are shooting more than 93 grains by weight, and that's fine. We can get into that a little bit later, but what we're doing is comparing this powder to our previous powders. So without any more further ado, we are going to be continuing to use the Optima V2 with the Conus 3x9x40 scope on top of it. And again, we are shooting out at 100 yards. I can show you that now. So all the way at 100, and then we'll back this guy out. You guys can see where we're at underneath this shed here. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. First up is going to be the 63 grain. Okay, well, we kind of have a couple shots there. We have one up, one out there in the white, and then one back on top of the target there. This is going to start us out at a 5 5/8 of an inch group. Not an awesome group, but that's kind of what we've seen before in the other powders, especially the 777s and the pellets. When we're running those tests, we kind of start with that bigger group and then work our way in. So not a lot of difference there. We are looking at 1559 and 1645. So we are out, like I said, we're at the low end. We're in the 1500s, 1600s with this powder. But again, that's kind of what we've seen with the other powders as well. So let's go ahead and let's move into the 77.7 grains, and let's see how that does accuracy wise. Hey, that's pretty respectable. I'll take that all day long. That group came in at a 2.5 inch group. That is actually pretty good, especially coming off of a 5 5/8 inch group. So looking at our velocities here, for some reason, the first one didn't take. The second shot did read at 1552, and then that last one somehow read 3,337. So we're gonna kind of disregard that, and just that's an erroneous reading. That there's no way that this thing shot 3,000 feet per second without this gun exploding in my face. So a bit dramatic, but my point. So the only one that we really had there was about 1552. Which we had, you know, a little bit faster and a little bit slower coming out of the 63 grain. So kind of take that for what it's worth coming out of that. So getting into what all the old timers consider the best load at 80 grains, let's go ahead and see what 80 grains does. Well, that's interesting. We kind of walked our way down there. It's like bam to bam to bam coming on this target. When you look at the velocities, we have 1703, 1749, and then 1680. So that 1749 really doesn't correspond with what you would expect to see with the velocities going down there. So not awesome. That came in at a 3 3/4 of an inch group. Coming off of a 2.5 inch group, that's not great. That's not really that great. It is kind of what we've seen across some of the other pellets as far as 3.5 goes, 3 3/4 rather, but again, not great. So far 77.7 is at that 2.5 mark, which kind of concerns me because we're moving into the 93 grain where we had a bigger group going to a smaller group going to a bigger group. And those that are familiar with ladder tests, normally what happens is you go into tight and then you come out of tight. So I'm really concerned to see what happens with the 93 grains. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let's see what 93 grains does. That's what I'm talking about. 1.5 inch group right there, right around that bullseye. Now, the first shot did go down and to the right a little bit, because you guys can tell there are 4 shots on paper with this one. That's because that first one was right then we had two right on top of each other. I wanted to see what would happen if I did that 4-shot and it landed right on top of it. So taking that first one out of the picture, so those of you that want to go with the fouling the barrel first, this is actually really good for that. If we'd have fouled the barrel with a primer, then got our 1.5-inch group, that would really work awesome. But just seeing those two land right on top of each other is fantastic. I love it when that happens. Guys, so 93 grains. I was kind of surprised. Overall, the 3-inch group did come down a little bit from the 3 3/4 that we just had, but it doesn't beat our 2.5-inch group. But again, guys, that 1.5-inch group with the 93 is pretty awesome. I love seeing that. Anytime I can get a bullet one on top of the other, that's what I love to see. So DJ, overall, what do you think about this particular powder? And the truth is, with the exception of, it was difficult to find there for a while. Looking at Mid-South Shooter Supply, which is right up the road from me in Clarksville, they have it in stock right now. So I may go up there and get a couple of those jugs. That way I've got it on hand. But with the exception of not being able to find it originally when I started looking for it, yes, absolutely we get this and add this to the list with the 777. Like I said, mainly because of the cleanliness of it. The accuracy with the 93 grains by weight is enough to say, hey, I would actually want to dig in and find a actual weight that works for my ELD-X and really hone this in. All right, so real quick, looking at the data sheet here, we have the 777 and 2F and then 777 3F just above the Shooter's World here. And one thing I want to pull away from this is the velocity increases that we're seeing with the Shooter's World opposed to the 777. So not quite a huge step up, but it definitely is a little bit faster on our averages that we've seen. So real quick, we've got the 2F at 63 grains, we're at 1476. 3F, we're looking at 1486. And then down here in the Shooter's World, we're looking at 1601 as an average. So, and then down at the other end of the spectrum, we have 93 grains at 1772, 93 at 1745, and then 93 the Shooter's World at 1797. So again, it seems like the Shooter's World is a little bit faster on average. Then moving over here to the Pyrodex, we have the RS and the Select just below the Shooter's World on this one. And this one is even more so faster on average than the Pyrodex. So we got the 63 grain at 1601 as we mentioned. Down here at the RS, we've got 63 at 1378 and 1371 on the Select. And then again, the other end of the spectrum, we have 93 grains of Shooter's World at 1797, 93 RS at 1666, and then 93 at 1625. Again, compared to that 1797, that is the Shooter's World. So it seems to be moving a lot faster, or in this case, a lot faster than the Pyrodex, a little bit faster than the 777. But as we know, the speed doesn't necessarily translate into accuracy. Because looking across these averages, that 5 5/8 is pretty big, and even the 3 3/4 is bigger than most of the other groups that we've seen. So it doesn't necessarily equate to accuracy, but just note the biggest takeaway from this is that the Shooter's World seems to be slightly faster than all the rest, and with its cleanability, definitely puts it as a contender against these other ones. All right, guys, so there you have it. So like I said before, would I choose this? Absolutely, I would get this. I would have no problem picking this off the shelf and running with it, especially what I saw with that 93 grain. By weight. So guys, if you guys are still with us, I cannot say thank you enough for being here on this channel and being a part of what we're doing here on Suburban Hunt 365. Guys, if you can, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, please, 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 please throw those comments down below, because that's what helped drive this channel. As I mentioned in last week's video, it was because of your comments that I went back and I retested that, and it's because of your comments that I picked this up off the shelf when I was in Little Rock. Otherwise, I would have not known that it really existed or even mattered. So your comments help drive this channel. Can't thank you guys enough. So from Suburban Hunt 365, I am DJ. Guys, we'll catch you on the next one.